Hello, Lazio over the world. Well, we had problems just like Lazio would say this Sunday had. So we apologize for this issue with the going live, but I can promise you this show is going to be probably one of the funniest ever. As soon as you listen to Alistair talking, you're going to enjoy it. So guys, unfortunately, you have to talk about the
Maybe
derby.
I should just stay quiet for the rest.
Unfortunately, you have to talk about the derby, but Alistair is already laughing, so that's encouraging. After probably the worst performance in the derby, we were mentioning the 5-1 with Montella humiliating a Nesta a couple of years ago. Probably that's the worst experience we ever had. And even in that match, the game was over in the first half, right? Roma scored 4 goals in the first 45 minutes, if I'm not wrong. And the second half was just a friendly. Alistair, are you still with us?
Sorry, you froze there for a second, but yeah, one of the worst derbies ever. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can see you just laughing as soon as you hear me starting to talk here. But first, apologize for the state of my voice box. It's, I think, a combination of being angry at Lazio, being angry at the Scottish rugby team, and having too much beer over the weekend while I was away in Germany. So it's in this. But I think that I tweeted at halftime of the derby that I couldn't ever remember a more one-sided half. But we extend that to being a more one-sided game because, let's be honest about it, it finished 3-0. It could have been 5 at least, maybe even more than that, the way the Lazio played. And it's hard to say anything positive apart from that we had a nice choreography. So that was something.
Are you more disappointed about the performance in the first half or the lack of reaction in the second half? Because honestly, I was expecting that the first 10, 15 minutes of the second half would have been, every player trying to attack and try to score at least one goal. Give a sign of life. Instead, nothing happened. Roma had the biggest chance in the second half. So what was the most disappointing thing?
I think both those things come from the same problem for me, which is necessarily use the word mentality again, but I think it's almost odd. And the thing that annoys me most about it is that there is this almost like complacency of accepting things will happen from time to time, because so regularly is something that Sarri's noticed since he's arrived at the club, but it goes as well that Lazio will have these games where they just completely implode. But the problem is that the squad is made up of more or less the same core of players that it always has. These guys are so used to this happening that they almost seem to just, it's like, we're having another one of those days. Oh, well, let's move on to the next one. What the fans want to see is pride and a bit of fight, fighting against what it's. I think it's that attitude of acceptance that annoys people the most. I think people would be more willing to get over this derby defeat if, in this, like you say, they came out firing. But for me, it all comes back to that same. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Let's say hello to Hardos that is joining us, is watching us live. Remember that you can follow us, the podcast, live on Twitch and YouTube, and obviously you can listen to the audio version on Spreaker, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, and you can support this podcast. And we really need your support today after such a bad defeat on patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Alistair, I had a lot of discussion because, for example, Michael Di Marshall, one of our followers, member of Lazio Club Toronto, he blamed Sarri a lot for this. But as you were mentioning, this happened last year when we had Simone Inzaghi. He's basically saying that Sarri is not a motivator, and that he should blame the blame should be on the manager that didn't prepare the match as well as Mourinho. What's your take on this? Do you blame the manager? Do you blame only the player? Do you blame the universe?
Blame you.
Obviously.
Probably. I really reductive to blame a result like this on any one. I think a result like this comes a combination of everything that's gone into putting this team together. Perhaps Sarri could have motivated the team out. Maybe he does have a responsibility to inject a different mentality from what I try and do something to make sure these players are more fired up than they were. But he's failed to do that, but so did Inzaghi failed to do that, and they should be doing that to the leadership group in this squad are as responsible for that as the coaches when it comes to the actual attitude on the pitch. There's only so much a coach can really do about that. And also, he can only do the sum of the parts that he has. We know is made up of a group of players who basically that's what it comes down to. Squad depth is atrocious. The defense is a joke. And so these kind of things are going to happen from time to time. So I wouldn't blame Sarri, but my question to you really is, do you think there's an angle we can take here where you could almost see it as a blessing in disguise? Because if we got to the end of the season, and this might still happen, but if we get to the end of the season and finish fifth, Lotito Tare might say, yeah, look, this squad's not as bad as everyone's saying. It's all an overreaction. Sarri's taken us just outside the top four. Whereas all of us who've been watching this season, this team, we know that they're covering big wounds with tiny plasters to make this happen. And relying on the underperformance of other teams as well. After a result and a performance like this, there's no hiding from the fact that this team's not good enough. That's something, trying to find a positive spin on it that more.
Well, I think there are two positive takes on this. And one is what's happening today. Luis Felipe is signing for Betis. And I think a couple of months ago, we will be all concerned about that, worried, and would blame the club. After the performance of Luis Felipe on Sunday, I think the reaction for a lot of Lazio fans is, okay, better for us, So this revolution that could happen this summer, I think it makes a lot of sense because this group have proved to have quality, but to disappear in big moments, especially in the derby. So this is the first take. And, we could be thinking, well, selling a lot of players this summer could be a mistake after this derby, after the matches against AC Milan, etc. I think, well, maybe it's time. Maybe it's even overdue. The other second point is the best player on the pitch for me was Luca Romero, 17 years old Argentina that has been called in the national team. He was the only one with Lazzari, I would add, coming in and fighting and showing a little bit of will. And he had a little bit of fight with a Roma player. He was the only one, Alistair, the only one. And he's 17 years old. I think we should start from him going forward.
I mean, it's encouraging, I think, to see that he's got that spirit behind him. It's that pretty much, I think the reason that stood out so much as well was just because it came in such a massive contrast to the rest of them. There was so much resignation in the body language of the rest of the team that when you've got this young kid coming on and scrapping and making runs and like being really energetic and throwing himself into it, he didn't do anything particularly amazing. He didn't show any moments of quality. It was actually all about his attitude, I think, which is why people are so impressed by him. His attitude. That's what you should be expecting as a minimum from a derby. That's the thing that you always hear coaching is about controlling the controllables. You know, like that's not something that's down to the gods. That's not something that's a crazy refereeing decision or you know, you can't account for a moment of quality like Pellegrini's free kick. You just have to put your hands up and say, okay, that was amazing, and there's nothing you can do about that. But what you can control is going out there with the acknowledgement of how and the kind of attitude you're going to need to perform well in a game like this. And so when you see Romero come on and he's got that attitude, you know, what's happening with the rest of them? And then I think something else that seemed to wind up people was the fact that I think Pedro was the only player who actually came over to thank the fans after the game.
Yep.
Things like this, it seems like a lot of these guys have been around for long enough to know that it's expected of them from the fan base in these games.
Yep. Alistair, we have plenty of questions, and this is not a surprise when Lazio loses, right? Oliver Field is asking, how many fractured bones in exchange for a penalty awarded for Lazio?
A few. Yeah, it's a penalty, isn't it? I mean, you can't smash someone's face in half and it not be a penalty, no matter what the circumstances are. So yeah, I do think it, but at the same time, you're never going to convince me that would have changed the game in any way.
No, at all. But yeah, I think a couple of bones you need for a penalty for Lazio. And the other thing he was saying is, should we had an injured Radu on the bench to enforce some attitude, willpower into our team?
I quite like that idea. Just having him kind of on crutches, sitting on the bench. I don't know. I mean, I don't think someone like is necessarily the answer, because he's been around for as long as anyone else has, watching all of these things happen. And yes, he's one of the more passionate players in the team. But I think it all needs shaking up in the summer. I mean, I think that I don't have them in front of me, apologies, but I think we've had a few questions about Iglitare again, and I think that it is worth discussing, because this result has thrown up. I should say there's no we've learned from this result, really. It's, you know, the defense isn't good enough. We knew that. These players bottle under pressure in big games from time to time. We know that. They have these huge, embarrassing, heavy defeats from time to time. We already know that. You know, it's nothing new. It's just a derby, which means all these topics are being, you know, heightened again. But Tari has to basically rebuild this entire team in the summer, and he has to do it with no money. So I'm really worried, because I don't see really what's going at the moment.
I'm not sure.
The thing that worries, what's Sarri going to think about that?
I'm not sure without money, because we have the Binance money, we have the Mizuno money, we should have the Correa money as well, and maybe, who knows, maybe Murici get the deal with Mallorca, etc. So I think we have money. It's true that we're gonna lose a lot of players on free transfer, but this is something that is getting more used to, right? Dybala's going away on free transfer for Juventus, etc. So the biggest issue I have, Alistair, is not the money, it's how many players Lazio have to sign. Because if Luis Felipe is going, Patrick is going, all the three goalkeeper is going, maybe Acerbi wants to leave. I mean, we usually sign 4 or 5 players a summer. This summer, we need to sign, seriously, 7, 8, or 9 even to compete. And I mean, we know how long it takes for Tare to sign a player. He should be starting signing players now to be ready for the 1st of August.
Exactly, and you mentioned how players to be, you know, signing contracts now. Well, it is, but for other clubs, with Escalante, I'm struggling to think of how many players otherwise we've managed to get ahead of the deal and do that in advance. I'm sure there have been a few, but
Morrison,
relatively
Perea,
memorable.
Djordjevic. We are signing
Yeah.
Nadal.
Okay. So yeah, we're not very good at it,
No.
basically. Um, I know what you're saying. Like maybe losing Luis Felipe on a free transfer shouldn't be as judged as harshly as it would have been when De Vrij went, for example. But at the same time, why aren't we doing this? It's the priority. Also, given the
Yep.
yes, my financial point is more to do with the fact of what you were saying. How many? You might have some money, but do we have the money needed to rebuild a squad? No. So free transfers are the way to go, really.
Well, you were mentioning that this match could be really important for this summer. I think this match showed us also that, well, maybe some players could be sold this summer without, losing that firepower, etc. I'm thinking especially about Luis Alberto, who didn't show up in the derby. I'm thinking about Felipe Anderson, who really couldn't dribble past himself in the derby. Uh, I would keep Milinkovic Savic, one of the few players who tried even with a broken nose. But after this derby, I think of the 11 starting players, you can argue that the only one to keep would be Pedro, Milinkovic Savic, and Ciro Immobile. All the others, if the right offers arrive, goodbye.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to know how this is going to play out. I mean, essentially, what we really need to happen is Latito to actually inject some cash into the club. That's what it comes down to, because the liquidity index is proving to be a bigger problem for Lazio than almost is. He's unwilling to put cash into the club, and there doesn't seem to be any chance of any, outside investment coming in. If we at least got some cash into the, doesn't seem possible.
Well, probably you were in Germany and you didn't read the newspaper on Saturday, but the new Lega Calcio president said that there's no issue about liquidity for Lazio, Genoa, Sampdoria. These rumors are completely fake because the numbers still haven't been announced. They should be announced the 30th of March. Today's the 22nd. So again, Repubblica, again, another article invented against Lazio. Not a big surprise. But obviously, if we have to sign 10 players, this is going to be very complicated. So that's why I'm mentioning, Luis Alberto. If we find someone offering 30, 35 million euros, well, maybe he should go. I think the important thing, Alistair, and I don't know if you agree with me, is that this summer we have to sign not only good players, but strong characters. We need a Di Canio, we need a Veron, we need a Simeone. We need those type of players who don't disappear in big matches. And I think we have Luis Alberto, that is that type of player. We have Felipe Anderson. I mean, the performance of Felipe Anderson Sunday was unbelievable, embarrassing. So, I think this is another thing we have to work out, and it's very important for our future.
Yeah, and on top of that, they need to be players who are comfortable playing in Sarri's system.
Yeah, obviously.
So, this is all difficult because you essentially need players who are comfortable on the ball as well as being, like you're saying. Totally agree with that. But there's no point if you're bringing in some, one-dimensional kind of warrior who actually he's pressed. Because I don't know, like looking at the game on Sunday, the amount of passing and giving away the ball. You know, I don't want to take it away from Roma. I think they showed exactly what Lazio lacked, which was that the belly, that passion, that real urgency about the derby, and they completely took advantage of how lax Lazio were. But again, you can control those situations. You know, just easy the ball and make decisions, and they just completely capitulated.
By the way, happy birthday, Hardos. It looks like it's his birthday today, so happy birthday. You could be celebrating better with a derby win, but didn't work out. Alistair, let's go to the first goal. Who do you blame more? Acerbi, Strakosha, or someone else?
I don't know. Probably Cherby. Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. I mean, Strakosha's probably going to get there, but the way it came in is kind of just beyond the kind of front post defender, and he doesn't react particularly quickly to it, but it's whipped in really fast. So I don't know. I mean, the whole thing, it was just kind of a catalogue of errors, really. Yeah, and you know, it's what is the quickest ever derby goal? Is that right?
Probably, yeah, yeah.
And I think it's the worst possible thing that could happen to this Lazio team, which comes back to the earlier point of what does it say about this team that, I mean, for me, and I expect you were probably the same, if they concede a goal like that early, you just think, right, well, we're done here.
Yeah, the game is over. Kiki Saputra is asking, play once in a week turns out to make players much sharpness have decreased. I think our problem is in mentality. Sari was mentioning, right, that playing once a week would help Lazio prepare the match. Instead, it didn't work out. Even against Venezia, I thought we didn't play that well.
Exactly, yeah. So that's an issue. That was a convenient narrative for us anyway to say that, you know, now that Sari's got the full week to prepare, we're going to see this Lazio kick on, and we shouldn't find signs of progress. You know, that has been there, so it's not all kind of going up in smoke. It's just that this is also there, so we may well get back to the games and look quite good again. But it's these moments that we can't forget about them, because for an ambitious team, they're going to cost you over the course of a season. So I don't know why. It's just the same thing I've been saying. I think it's this attitude of maybe we've got a full week here, we're going to be fine. But I don't know.
Were you surprised?
Team's not good enough, probably.
Were you surprised to see his eyes starting?
Because Sari just loves the guy so much, and he's a more kind of conservative option than Lazzari, so I wasn't that surprised. Prefer to see Lazzari. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was expecting Patrick to start after the performance he had against Venezia. But when in the press conference, Sari spoke about having different option there, I could see what he was thinking, right? I start with a more defensive style, and then in the second half, we see how it goes. Unfortunately, the match was over before the second half started. So that was an issue. The other thing I would mention, Alistair, is Felipe Anderson's performance. I understand that you didn't have Zaccagni on the bench, but I thought Felipe Anderson should have been gone after 35 minutes. His performance was embarrassing. And again, Cabral didn't come in. I mean, what tells you that? I think his last match was the 21st of February. He played twice in 3 days in Europe League and then in Serie A, because who got injured immediately? Pedro, and he came in, I think, right, against Udinese. And then after that, disappeared, totally disappeared. He's Kamenovic 2.0, basically.
Yeah, and when he first came, even though we were very critical of Lazio's January mercato straight afterwards, but when he started getting some minutes, we thought, he looks like a decent player. Maybe Lazio have actually managed to get someone good here by mistake. And and instead we've is getting on the pitch before he does. So yeah, who knows what's going on there? I mean, my question to you now really is: do you think there's a risk of kicking out? Because if you put yourself in his position, he's come in, and I guess like an ambitious project has been sold to him. But while he's been here, he's seen that the club isn't able or willing to give him the even slightly over two markets, and that there's not as much ambition kind of behind him as perhaps he would have expected. And I guess that comes back to the market that's coming up. But if this contract that we keep talking about isn't happening, the same thing that was with Inzaghi, wasn't it? It was months and months and months of we're going to sign the contract, and they've just started the same process earlier. And I just think if I'm in Sarri's position and this summer mercato is a disaster, he's really being thrown under the bus, because it's not. He can't be expected to perform miracles.
No, I agree with you. I don't think he's going to resign this summer, but maybe at the end of the contract, that is a 2-year contract, he could leave and walk out and say, I tried my best. The club didn't help me, didn't support me, and so I'm moving forward. Definitely, this could be a solution. It's also true that it looks like he asked for his eye, who turned out to be a disaster. So, in this type of summer transfer or transfer in general, we often blame Tare because, everybody hates Tare. But in some occasion, we have to blame the manager. Let's not forget that Inzaghi wanted Fares, and we all see how things turns out. Sarri wanted his eye, and we are looking at his performance. So, but definitely, he need help. On the other side of Rome, we're seeing a team that is not playing great football, but spent a lot of money in summer and winter. And again, they started with a player they signed in January. Our player we signed in January hardly take the pitch. So obviously, this is a big issue. And I mean, if it was Conte, I think he would have already walked away. But with Sarri, maybe he's going to stay another year and see how things goes. Because, again, I think there are some hidden gems in this team. Luca Romero is someone. I think Raul Moro could be another interesting player. But, yeah, we have to improve the roster. We have to improve the team. And this summer is going to be decisive. And I'm really concerned because, as we were mentioning before, we have to sign seriously 9 players. It's not just to put a number there. We have to sign 4 central defenders, seriously. 2 goalkeepers at least, So it's already 6. Then you have to find a replacement to Leva that is probably leaving. We are 7. You have to finally sign a Vice Immobile. 8. In front, are you keeping Pedro? Are you keeping Felipe Anderson? Maybe you need to sell Luis Alberto and get another one, without forgetting the left back. Are we saying like that? Don't think so, right? Patrick is leaving, so 9 is minimum.
You've run out of positions.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so, I mean, on that note, I mean, do you think Sarri's right to take the public approach he has, where for example, Mourinho has been like really loudly, well, not so much recently, but the first 6 months of the season, Mourinho was really publicly critical of the club for the transfers they made, for the quality of the squad that he had. And Mourinho, rightly, in my opinion, got criticized for complaining about these things, considering, which is more than anyone else in the league. And the fact that some of the players he was leaving out of the squad had previously performed pretty well in Serie A just a year before. But do you think that it's that kind of driving standards thing? Is Sarri right? I will talk about I think he said, I'll tell the club privately what I think about this. Do you think he's right? That's the best way of going about it, or do you think that actually that he puts on the club by saying publicly,
Well,
I need more. Like this isn't.
I think he could say I need more, but not like Mourinho did, because that create fraction inside the team, and we already have too many fraction in Lazio. So, but definitely we have to uh, increase the communication, obviously, because we don't know. Kamenovic has been signed. Why is he not playing? Why is he not playing? What happened to Cabral? I mean, we need to know the answer to this question. And at the same time, they're talking about meeting for the future. Okay, what are they talking about? Are they really going to sign Romagnoli? Have they built a project for the future, saying, okay, we need this type of players. We are close to sign this full central defender and so on. Because I think the biggest issue is this, the project. Because I think the big difference between Lazio and Roma, we have the right manager and we are playing better football. I think we need to change the team and have a bigger help from a sport director. So yeah, that's the point. Increase the communication and let us know that there is a plan, because we really doubt about that.
Yeah, and well, the most optimistic way of looking at it, where we're unlikely to have a big transfer budget for all of this stuff that needs done in the summer. Finally, take us back to Tari's best. You've got very little money, but we need all these important positions, and we've spoken about this a lot before. The idea of Tari being better with a shoestring budget than he is with double figures to spend on players. He's gonna have to have probably his best ever summer market. Um, and if he doesn't, it has to be time to go. It really does, because it's too long now.
Yeah, well, probably last summer was his best summer transfer in the past 4 years or so. Before the derby, he said that he's definitely staying. So uh, I don't know if I'm gonna be happy about that, but yeah, he has a big summer in front of himself, and let's hope he does things right, because we definitely need it. I think Sarri will help us, but I mean, as I always said, manager without the right players, it's useless.
Final question from me: good time or a bad time for an international break?
Well, when you lose that bad, you always want to come back as early as possible and play a match, so you forget the bad performance. So I think it's not the perfect time, honestly. At the same time, maybe players can sit down and understand what went wrong, what's missing, even for the club, and be prepared. Because now the most important thing is, okay, the derby is over. It wasn't the final. Now we have 8 match that are really, really important and not very easy. We have Sassuolo, we have Genoa, we have Torino. What's after that? Milan, maybe? I don't remember. But
Milan, yeah.
Yeah, we have 8 matches that are really, really important. And we still have a big chance to finish fifth if we win these matches. So it's time to regroup. It's time to focus on the next match, remembering that Sassuolo, Genoa has been our nemesis in the past. They always play unbelievable football against us. So it's not going to be easy, but we have to focus on this last 8 match because we need to finish in the Europe League. I think this has to be our goal.
Yeah, and that's still on. I mean, it's like what I was saying about how being a horrible day for us and a humiliation, all that. We didn't actually learn anything we didn't already know, and like the season, nothing really has. It's a bit harder than it was, but it's not like fallen to pieces because Roma have won that game. Obviously, losing the head-to-head is annoying as well, because it essentially gives them an extra point. But it's still very much within grasp. And yeah, the Europa League, it's not the most sexy competition in Europe, but it does give you much needed millions in the bank. And I think we'd rather be in it than so we can get through the group and go out in the first knockout round again.
Let's hope not. But yeah, I agree. Our target has to be, our goal has to be the Europe League. Alistair, I think we can wrap it up here. I would love to hear you chanting Lazio anthem with this voice, but I think it's better to do it next time.
Yeah, that's enough podcasting for me, I think, for the next week.
I think the most important thing we learn this weekend is that you don't have to go to Germany anymore when Lazio's playing.
Well, I don't think we need to worry about that happening for quite a long time, if I'm honest.
Good to know. Thank you again, Alistair, for joining us. Thanks, Hardos, and all the other that joined live. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on Spreaker, Spotify, and YouTube, and follow us on Twitch. And we're going to be back, I think, in 2 weeks' time. Thank you again, guys.
Cheers.